The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's crackin', friends? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. I am Dan Besbris. It's Tuesday, which means we're settling in for the work week now. We had Monday, we had the reverse chronological lightning round. Plenty of things to talk about on yesterday's podcast. Today's show, perhaps, will be a little bit shorter than usual. We've been up around the 1 hour mark for basically the entirety of the season. But as I mentioned on our premium show yesterday, this is a time for large-scale projects to really start working on big things going forward. So what that means is we're going to dial the guests back a little bit, and you've probably already noticed that here in January there have been fewer guests. We're down to about 2 to 2.5 a week instead of 4 to 4.5 a week, and that's okay. It's going to be very concentrated on the fantasy data of the day. We're going to have some broad topics we get into. We're going to have our DFS shows as we continue to learn that craft from the great Micah Patria. We'll have some DFS guest pros that join us on the show from time to time. And of course, we'll have shows with Aaron Brewski, many of them live on Fridays. That'll also be available for you here on traditional podcast channels. But just in terms of kind of random beat writers and team blogs and things where we can do some extra digging, that's going to be set aside just for a little bit. Don't worry, we'll get back into that. And obviously, if there's some big news that breaks, luckily we have a really nice stable of potential guests. You know, if the Bulls do something, we got our Bulls guys. If the Grizzlies do something, we got our Grizz guys. So we got people that'll hop on and give us the inside information if we need it. And until that happens, we can focus on your fantasy team, all of our rosters, some strategic stuff that comes up at this time of year. Mid-January, as we start to count down towards the All-Star break, we get into that frame of reference, that part of the year. It's every segment of the season a little bit different. We're into the injury season right now. And we'll just work our way down the stretch, and we'll get into streaming season, trade deadline season. All these things are coming up. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, this is my favorite kind of week. There's somewhere between 6 and 8 games basically every day until Saturday. So all the shows we're going to be doing this week, we're going to be reviewing effectively a medium-sized card. Now, the problem with that is when you get a series of games, for whatever reason, the games we had on Monday night were not particularly deep fantasy dives. There just weren't that many questions going into that game. There were questions like, who would pick up the pieces with Kyrie Irving and Marcus Smart out for one game? There was a question of, I don't know, what would become of the Houston Rockets center position with Clint Capella down for 4 to 6 weeks? That's a soul-crushing piece of information that we didn't get to talk about yesterday. And the answer is just more James Harden. Nene got the start. He played 14 minutes at center. Isaiah Hartenstein played 7 minutes. So 21 center minutes to what you'd call traditional centers. The other ones basically went to P.J. Tucker. He played 31 minutes in this game, and I would argue most of them were at center. And he got away with it because Marc Gasol isn't right, and the Grizzlies are afraid to rest him at all. Because if they do, they're cooked, and he had a horrible game. Just awful. Bad shooting from everywhere. 7 turnovers. He looked listless and tired. And the Grizzlies look, as a whole, listless and tired. They traded for Justin Holiday and played him 14 minutes in this game, despite the fact that Kyle Anderson is out. And he can't really blame them because Holiday's in such a deep funk right now that he can't even shoot his free throws straight. They're all coming out of his hand funny. I always say it's darkest before the dawn. Why don't we just start in that ballgame? We'll just jump straight into the Monday recap, and then we'll work our way through things from there. Memphis is really bad right now, like real bad. And they were okay to start the year, but they're just not deep enough for anybody to get dinged up. So Marc Gasol being less than 100%, they fall apart. Mike Conley, he looked okay in this game, but he didn't look great. Garrett Temple, he's a place filler on a team that has functional stars, but when the stars go down, he's not a guy that's going to step up. Omri Cassie's been decent off the bench. Jaren Jackson Jr., for all of the good things he does, he's still a rookie, so he's not out there creating a bunch of stuff for himself. And so then they got to roll to Shelvin Mack. Rough times are these. Many of you asked who would benefit with slow-mo out, and the answer that I think most fantasy analysts gave was probably nobody. More Garrett Temple, maybe? Does he get an extra shot per game? It's unclear. They're just going to try to play a slower, uglier game, and it didn't work because they committed 24 turnovers, and the Rockets converted on a lot of them. And James Harden, this is amazing, had a usage rate in this game of 60. And this was a blowout. If this was a closer game, he would have played another 4 or 5 minutes, at least. 57 points, 9 rebounds, only 2 assists, because what are you going to do? There's nobody to throw it to. And the Grizzlies were like, look, we're just going to let Harden go to work and make sure nobody else can do anything. And that strategy sort of worked, except they couldn't score. Grizzlies actually 51% in this ball game. There's no reasonable explanation why they were as bad as they were, other than 11 more turnovers. They out-rebounded the Rockets. They out-assisted the Rockets. All of the peripheral numbers in this game say Grizzlies should have won it by 15, except the final score and the turnover department. Everything else was almost a dead heat. They also missed all of their free throws. Rockets made 20 out of 22, and the Grizzlies made 12 out of 22. So you put those 8 in there, it's still a 10-point loss. Sometimes you just got to take care of the basketball, and between Mike Conley and Marc Gasol, 12 turnovers is just not very good. For the Rockets, I thought what you might see was better rebounding from P.J. Tucker, but he was too busy dealing with 7 feet, 275 pounds of dude, and there was just, what energy is going to be left at that point? He did manage a decent ball game. 3 steals, 5, 4, and 5 with a 3-pointer. It's a positive number for PJ. We'll take it. Gerald Green had 14 points. They're going to need him to do some scoring. It sounds like Eric Gordon is close, and I have to wonder if, I know that they're really trying to go careful with Chris Paul, but don't they have to give James Harden some kind of rest? Is it going to be, there's the question, I guess, is it going to be they try to bring Paul back a little bit sooner, or do they just give Harden a night off in there and take an L somewhere along the way? It's a weird thing to think about because you want to keep winning games. Obviously, blowout wins are going to be helpful, but a usage rate of 60, he's going to die. He's just going to collapse on the court, and someone's going to have to carry him to the locker room. This is crazy. You can't ask that of a guy every night. Maybe you hope that you can somehow, I don't know if they have any back-to-backs coming up, but heavens, he's in real trouble. So anyway, that's where you sit with the Memphis Grizzlies and Houston Rockets. No, you're not picking up Daniel House. I know he's been playing okay lately, but Eric Gordon's return is probably going to impact him the most, I would venture to say. But, at this point, almost anybody could step up on a given night, because can they really expect James Harden to score half of their points? Half? I don't trust these other guys unless somebody emerges. Gerald Green would be the closest thing to it, because he's just going bombs away from downtown. He could go on a stretcher of 5 or 6 3-pointers a game, but in all likelihood, the guy that's going to do that is going to be Eric Gordon. Boston and Brooklyn. The Nets got out to a giant lead. They almost blew it in the fourth quarter. Jared Allen's been playing better the last couple of ball games. Good to see him get it going. D'Angelo Russell, really nice ball game. I'll give credit when credit is due, and he's been playing well. Kuric's at 19, Joe Harris 13 and 8, Damari Carroll double-doubled. This is an uninteresting team. Spencer Dinwiddie is going to start finding himself getting dropped or benched, and he probably should be benched right now. He's in a slump. And the fact that there was a thing, this is like the joke to end all jokes. The fact that I believe it was his coach, Kenny Atkinson, but I might be getting the details of this wrong, and one of you guys I'm sure will call me out on it. But just know that I'm aware that I might be getting the details of this wrong. I believe the story goes that someone was talking to Kenny Atkinson about Spencer Dinwiddie going through some struggles, and he said something, he's going through a slump right now. And players apparently are very sensitive to being told they're in a slump, which is crazy because obviously he's in a slump, and he'll shoot himself out of it, and everything will be okay. This is an opportunity to buy low on a guy that's going to sit around the top 100. He's not going to give you much more than that, but he's also not going to be this bad. And for the Nets, they've been a decent ball club sort of regardless. Napier, Rondé Ellis-Jefferson, both very close to making their returns. You guys know that I'm sort of giving up on Rondé, but there's some room for him right now with Dinwiddie struggling. D'Angelo Russell being asked to basically do everything. Jared Allen is healthy, so that center position is held down, and it's going to come down mostly to the health of DeMarre Carroll. So I'm not jumping on any of these guys, and with Carroll's shooting line tonight, he's hardly a guy you can trust either. For Boston, I honestly thought Marcus Morris would have a better ball game. He just couldn't get the shot to drop, which is a weird story for a guy that had been outstanding in that department all season long. But he had an off night, and everybody's entitled to those. Jason Tatum was outstanding. Jaylen Brown was better. You figured one of those guys would step up, and Terry Rozier was not. Whatever. This is not a team where I'm chasing it. It's DFS stuff. You throw your Boston guys in there when somebody's out. And season long, not really. Charlotte got themselves a little win in San Antonio. This might be like a one-day delayed effort from that giant blowout. Remember, Charlotte lost by almost 40 points in Portland. I think it was Portland. And then they flew straight to Sacramento for a brutal... It was the Clippers. Sorry, it wasn't Portland. It was L.A. And then they flew straight to Sacramento for a difficult back-to-back. And they almost pulled it off. And you guys know I've been tracking these teams off of 30-plus point losses. And that's a tough spot because you want to try to bounce back, but you just have nothing in the tank, and it's tough travel. But then they had a day off, flew to San Antonio, and then it was kind of like, all right, guys, we lost by 35, whatever it was. Let's go punch somebody in the mouth. And it was the Spurs that got punched in the mouth. Spurs, by the way, they need Marco Bellinelli and Rudy Gay. They're not deep enough anymore to be down a couple of guys. I know that sometimes you see this revolving door of Davis Bertans and Patty Mills and Bryn Forbes, but they all basically occupy the same role, where if one of those guys is out, another one is plug and play. But if Rudy Gay is out, it's not. If Bellinelli is kind of one of those guys as well. I'm not going to read too much into this. Charlotte just played a better game. Made a bunch of three-pointers, hit their shots, whatever you want to call it. Only turned it over 7 times. But the Spurs are dinged up right now, and they'll start to catch up with them a little bit. Of course, with a host of players down for San Antonio, you got Derek White just going crazy right now, and I'm kicking myself, continue to. I know Brew tried to talk me down on Friday where he was saying, oh, no, don't beat yourself up. But, yeah, that was one where I moved too slowly. And he's proven himself to be outstanding. I still think there's a shooting regression coming because he's been shooting basically 55% or better every game for 2 weeks, including some three-pointers. And even Steph doesn't do that. So it's going to level off a little bit on the shooting side. But he's getting more assists than I thought he would, despite the fact that he's a point guard. He's orchestrating some. He'll get you a few defensive stats. He's just been nice across the board. And nicer than I expected. And kicking myself. Should have moved quicker on that one. Over on the opposite side, for Charlotte, Nick Batum coming off a really good ball game. And this one was, this is like if you drafted Nick Batum as a late round 3-and-D guy. That's not very fun. Bismack Biyombo, Willie Hernan-Gomez, they both stink, so you're not worried about that. They need Cody Zeller back. Kemba Walker had a big ball game. Jeremy Lamb had a really nice one. Marvin Williams had a classic Marvin line. 3 3-pointers, 5 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 3 for 6 shooting, 2 for 2 at the foul line, no turnovers. That's beautiful. That's an old man Marv. And because it was a blowout, he didn't even hit 30 minutes. He did it without hitting the Marvin Thad line. Cool. Detroit and Utah. Utah's playing well these days. Detroit covered, by the way. Revenge game there. Revenge games, by the way, on Monday night. There were 4 of them, and we'll recap those later on in the show. We'll talk a little bit more on the sports wagering side. Andre Drummond was okay, missed a bunch of shots. Blake Griffin missed a bunch of shots. Detroit is so boring. Good Lord. I don't even know how they hang in ball games some of the time. Utah just didn't shoot the ball very well, so that worked out okay. Kyle Korver had 19 off the bench in 32 minutes. It's going to be somebody different. And this is, remember, I was talking about how I didn't really trust Royce O'Neal. I didn't think it was going to be this bad for him, but he hadn't really shown the fantasy stat set prior to those last 2 basketball games. And then you had this one, and you thought, oh, okay, well, that's about what we expected. Donovan Mitchell is enjoying his time as the team's de facto point guard, although it was Joe Ingles who racked up 8 assists in this ball game, and he's fine with the point guard role as well. Rudy Gobert, tied his career high with 25 rebounds. I mean, I don't think you're trusting Kyle Korver. You're not trusting Royce O'Neal. Jay Crowder is not good anymore. Weird thing there. Did anybody ever think we were going to call Jay Crowder a poor man's Damari Carroll? Well, here we are. And in the departments of we weren't really paying much attention to what was going on, Portland and Sacramento, the only thing we were really keeping a semi-eye on was Harry Giles for the Kings, and it doesn't look like he's going to be playing enough minutes with that team healthy. He's a fun one if you're looking way down the line, but we're not right now, so you're not right now. I love Al-Farouq Aminu. He's a classic example of the Marvin Thad line as well. And then New Orleans and the Clippers, also two teams. We really weren't watching for anything, and nothing popped up. I mean, you're always going to check every box score, right? At the end of the day, I know that I say there isn't really anything that I'm watching for in these ball games, but if something happens, it's good to be aware of it. It's just that you can usually tell. This Clippers-Pelicans game, you looked at the list of players involved, you looked at the injury report, and it was fairly evident that there wasn't nothing here unless somebody got hurt. Unless something happened that I didn't know about, they didn't. And that was a relatively boring Monday, by all accounts. I know. It's just ridiculous. There's like nothing there. I wanted to take a moment here after talking about the storylines of Monday to once again remind everybody we've got our DFS contest coming up tomorrow. We should have that link available for you any moment now. A couple of folks have posted in the Hoopball forums that they'd like to get on the mailing list, and I got those email addresses. Fear not, if you put your email address in the forum thread, I will be adding it to the mailing list. So as soon as we get that room open, you will have a note that goes straight to your inbox that tells you the Hoopball DFS contest for the week is ready to go. If you don't want to post your email address in a Hoopball forum, you can feel free to tweet at me, and then we'll open up a direct message thread. You can send me your email address over there. It's a small email list right now, and I'm adding people one by one as they want to be a part of it. I have no problem with building it slow and steady. So come on down. Stop on by. Send me your email address. We'll get you in the DFS contest. You do not have to be a subscriber. I think that question popped up on the Hoopball Facebook page. Do you need to be a member at Hoopball to play in our DFS contest? No, absolutely not. It's open to everybody, and you can do as many as 3 teams per contest. I would warn you, though, that, the room might be open already by the time this podcast gets released. What I'd warn you is that we had 98 out of 100 slots filled last week. So by all accounts, it'll probably be full this week because it's gotten bigger every single time we've done it. Friends are telling friends, people are having fun. A couple of you are doing 2 lineups at a time instead of 1. So if you want to be in this contest, you're going to want to use the reserve your spot button or just build a rudimentary roster and then go back and change it later. Whatever you want to do, just make sure you do it ahead of time because it's probably going to get full. You're not going to be able to join if you try to do it at the last minute, and then you're going to be upset, and then you're going to have to wait a week until we open another one where hopefully, if this one does fill up to 100, then DraftKings will give us 150 slots going forward. It's $3 to enter. Right now, it's $300 in prizes, which is pretty cool. Top 20 pay for $15 a piece. First place gets a Hoopball t-shirt. Second place gets a goodie bag from our partners at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Check them out. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. At HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. You can just search for them on Amazon. Easiest way to find them. Just type in Hawaiian Isles. I told you on last week's show, Hawaiian IS is as far as you need to get, and then Amazon will be like, oh, you must mean Hawaiian Isles, and it'll appear in the suggested drop-down box. You can click on it, and it'll take you to all the sweet, sweet results. I love having Brew on Fridays. He tells me which flavor he's working on any given week, and it's a different one every time. He and his wife are loading up on Hawaiian Isles. It's funny because when this whole thing shook out, and shout out to Glenn over at Hawaiian Isles, when this whole thing started to take shape, and I was talking to Brewski, just the two of us, we were on a phone call to talk about the fact that, we wanted to build a partnership with another company that was also growing, bigger than us. Hawaiian Isles has been around well longer than we have. Growing like us, looking to overtake some of the bigger fish in the pond, as it were, like us. And then he stopped and he was like, honestly, like, this is crazy. This is my favorite coffee. This is what my wife and I, like, when we're going to treat ourselves, this is what we get. I can't believe that this is happening right now. And so I know this is still very surreal for him. You should check it out. HawaiianIsles.com, again, is the website. You can learn more about their flavors there, and then you can get it on Amazon if that's easier for you. I believe it even comes prime, so you could have it at your doorstep by Thursday. The other thing I wanted to mention here in kind of this in-between part of the show before we get into some of the gambling stuff from Monday night and then the look ahead to Tuesday evening, tonight, is that we're entering a part of the season that I haven't really titled it. I haven't given it a fun name or anything like that. But if I was going to, I think I'd probably call it the injury season. Because you're at a part in the year now where guys are just dropping like flies. And not for little things either. It's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever you want to call it. It's not insignificant amounts of missed time. And almost every one of us, if you go through a season without ever having to look at your team and thinking, oh, what do I do now? What do I do now? Then you are the luckiest person on planet freaking Earth. Because everybody else has to deal with it. Everybody else has to look at their team and think, do I survive this nonsense? You guys have heard me talk about my teams. Rudy Gay, Rob Covington, Kent Bazemore, Jonas Valanciunas, out on one of my teams. Who's out on the next one? Dwayne Dedman, Miles Turner, Chris Paul, Taurean Prince just came back. Marc Gasol might end up missing some time. That's team 2. Team 3. Derrick Rose just came back. Bazemore, JV, Chris Paul. I mean, obviously, some of them in their overlap there. These are guys that we were targeting in a lot of leagues. 4th league. Bazemore, Valanciunas, same again. Rose, Hardaway, Kevin Love. Who just came back in that league? It's crazy. I'm beat to hell. Guys, I'm hanging on by a thread. But here's the thing. Here's the point of all of this good stuff. All of this goodly stuff. We can survive this. Because it's only January 14th. It all seems significant as it's happening. I call this high school syndrome. The one thing that I still think is hilarious is when I talk to people that are in their teens and watching shows that are based on people in their teens and thinking back even to when you listeners, myself, whoever, were in high school. I doubt that there are many of you listening to this show that are actually still in high school. But if you are, awesome. We'd love to have you. But what I'm also going to do is pick on you a tiny bit right now. So hopefully you're okay with that. And that is, and I remember doing the same thing, convincing myself that whatever was going on in that moment was the most important thing that would ever happen to me. That's high school-itis, basically. And it's what we go through as fantasy players when one of our guys get injured. The second somebody goes down, Twitter goes crazy. Forums go crazy. People saying, what do I do? Do I drop this guy? He's going to be out for 3 weeks. Do I drop him? I already have 2 guys injured. No. Take a deep breath. There's no metric to this. But there's a certain measure of calm that if you maintain it, you will win. And here's why. 1, it's highly likely that you're not alone. In fact, in one of those leagues that I was just talking about, I just got done playing a team while all 4 or 5 of my guys were out that had Cantor, LeVert, Devin Booker, I believe, was out for that dude's team as well. Looking back and trying to figure out who was missing time for him. I think it was those 3 guys. I think they recently made a trade, and so things moved a little bit. But they had 3 guys out. I had 4 guys out. They had 3. So it wasn't really like I had 4 guys out. In my mind, I could just play it as though I had 1 guy out and they had none. And that's doable because my team was better than theirs. I could generally beat them even if I have more guys out. Not 4 more guys. Okay, now this week you turn the page and I still have all 4 of my guys out, and the other dude's team might miss a game from Darren Collison, and that's it. And that sucks. You know, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to get steamrolled this week in that league. But you know what? I'm not going to do anything about it because I'm in 3rd place, firmly, by the way, in 3rd place. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th have a pretty good size edge over the teams behind them. That's another thing you need to weigh out. And we're sitting on week 14, and usually they're about 20. So even if something goes wrong for the next 2 weeks, you'll still have 4 or 5 to make it up. You can stream like crazy if you have to during that stretch. You know, when we get into streaming weeks, we'll talk about that on the podcast as well. If your team got off to a rough start and you're in like 8th place and you have 4 guys injured, yeah, you probably need to cut bait. But if you've been listening to this podcast and reading the hoop ball stuff and being a diehard fantasy enthusiast and dodging the guys we told you to dodge, you shouldn't be in 8th place right now. I am in 1st, 3rd in my 2 head-to-head leagues, and in my roto leagues, I'm way behind a bunch of other teams in games played, but I'm sitting in like 4th and 5th in those, and if you run the averages on it, I come out in 2nd and 3rd place in those as well. If you're in that kind of position, and I wasn't 2 or 3 weeks ago, in those roto leagues, I was in 2nd place in both of them before all my guys got hurt. But there's time. There's time to make up the ground. There's plenty of time to make up that ground. Here's what, and okay, we have to dial all the way back to the beginning now, and then we'll wrap this segment up. Note number 1, get off to a good start. Because way back when I said, I don't really like drafting guys that start the year injured. Because it sets me behind the 8 ball. I want to get off to a quick start because that affords me a much greater luxury come this time of year. Come January. This is what we were talking about when many moons ago, we said you got to get off to a fast start because it's going to be super helpful later. This is that time. If you got off to a slow start when half of your team gets hurt, you've got no hope but to part with them. If your team got off to a really good start, as most of us did here at Hoop Ball and who followed the Hoop Ball stuff, this is when you get to ride it out. And fine, you'll fall from 1st to 3rd or 2nd to 4th or 3rd to 5th or whatever it is, but you're going to be fine because for a couple of reasons. Number 1, other teams in your league that were in a rough spot had some guys get hurt, and they probably had to dump them. There's always somebody floating around on the waiver wire that probably shouldn't be there. That's worth stashing. I know that when it's on Twitter, it's like, oh my God, how is this guy available in your league? Well, it's because teams panic when they're in dire straits. And if you're not in dire straits, and if you don't panic, you can end up stashing some of these guys. You can end up actually improving your team just by not being slow out of the gates. By being in good position early in the year, you can add other people's mid-tier players to your club. It's an awesome luxury to have. So, in conclusion, don't panic. Don't you dare panic at this time of year. Ride it out, even if it's a whole month. And it will be, easily, for my team by the time this is done. With Chris Paul, JV, and Bazemore all going down within like a week of each other, and all of them are probably going to miss anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks, I'm falling way behind in games played. But I've got a strategy. Strategy number 1, if that's a roto league, is you use your last roster spot to stream. Good players, not half-wits. You want to get top 80 type production in every night and rotate it based on somebody you know is going to be good on that particular night. That's how you can sort of float some of your lost games played. But don't drop your good players. Squat on them, make your changes elsewhere to get that extra production. Boom. Do you guys like it when I snap during a podcast. I just did it, and then I realized I don't even know if they can hear that. That's just me being super weird. But I guess at this point, you're probably pretty used to it. Gambling stuff. Let's talk gambling for a little bit before we get into what to look for on the Tuesday evening card. Monday night, the revenge angles continued to surge once again after a prolonged treadmill act, which is the only way I can describe it. You got to go all the way back to December 23rd. Am I getting this right? December 23rd. I think they ended 27 units up and then fluctuated between 29 and 24. 22? Might even, yeah, got down as low as like 21 and a half since then. So it's been almost a month. The 23rd, 1, 2, it's 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks since then. But the last 3 days, once again, it starts to push out in front. It's weird the way this stuff works, and that's why we're tracking it over such a long haul, because we're up to now 235 revenge plays all season, all told. And they've been really good, but also if you missed that first stretch between basically the middle of November and the middle of December, that's when things really had a nice hot run. They sort of, I don't want to say they hovered in place, but for the first... Yeah, 11-19, November 19th, it was at 0, right on the nose. It was completely break-even. It was like a couple games over 500, and because of the VIG, it was break-even. And then between November 19th and December 23rd, it jumped to up 27 units. I just told you that. 23rd, it ended up 27.1 units. That's crazy. That's like 5 weeks, up 27 units. And then since then, nothing. And as of 3 days ago... What does that put it down at? The 11th? The 9th? I think there were a couple of revenge games on the 9th, maybe a handful. On the 8th, it was at 21.2. The 9th went 3-2, so it was up a tiny bit, up 0.9 units. There weren't any on the 10th. And then the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, and 14th have been strong. I'm trying to make sure I'm getting all the numbers right. On the 9th, it was at 23 units. At the end of the 11th, it was at 23.7, so up a little bit. I think that was like 4 up, 3 down. At the end of the 12th, this is when things really started to pick up 25.6. That was a 3-in-1 day. The 13th was a 4-in-1 day. And then yesterday, another 3-in-1 day. So 10-3 over the last 3 days. And 14-6, I think, if you go back one additional day. Beyond that, 15-6 if you go a full week back. So things have picked back up again, and it's now up to a new high for the season of up over 30 units for the first time all year. It's crazy. And I'm not advocating you go out there and you just bet this stuff. Please don't do it. That's a terrible idea. It's why we're tracking it. I am, by the way, actually betting on it a little bit, but like literally $5. This is me like, okay, that makes me care enough to keep this thing going. I'm tracking 30-point losses, home and homes with the help of the great Neil Rochelani, and then these revenge games. There might be something here, but we have a long way to go. We're probably going to have at least another 100 to 150 plays the rest of this year. I'd love to go back and try to find the 300 or 400 plays from last year and the year before that. And if it really is as positive as it has been, then maybe we start looking into doing something more with it. But this is why you have to stick with it all the time. And we're going to find things out too, because there have been a lot of games where there are injury scratches and it kind of ruins the revenge play. This one didn't last night. The Nets still covered and won outright against the Celtics, despite the fact that Kyrie Irving and Marcus Smart were ruled out not that late. Somewhat early, but, late-ish for Boston. And then you look at Tuesday's card, and it just looks horrible. Phoenix, revenge at Indiana. Yikes. They're going to be catching a ton of points in that ball game. Atlanta, hosting Oklahoma City. You'd love to see them catch more points than they're actually going to be catching. Milwaukee, they lost to Miami earlier this year. That's terrifying. Golden State at Denver. I hate all of these things, but at the same time, there's something there. Warriors a 1-point favorite on the road. Looks like an easy bet on the Warriors, right? Maybe it will be. Maybe the public side wins one. I don't know. Oklahoma City, they're going to be laying about double digits on the road at Atlanta. Most recently, I think that number is about 9.5. Phoenix and Indiana, that's a double-digit one. Milwaukee hosting Miami, that's going to be up close to double digits as well. So you got all these big lines, one little one. Ah, man. I can't. This isn't like Mondays. When I looked at the Monday revenge games, I looked at all four of them and I thought, I like these. I like these a lot. In fact, the one that I didn't like still hit. And that was, I got to go back and pull up Mondays again. That was the Detroit-Utah one I was kind of afraid of. And they covered anyway. Sacramento was the one I liked the most. I bet a little bit bigger on that one myself. I didn't, that one I know I'm tracking it, but I also liked it. So I just bet it because screw it. What am I here for if not to bet the things that I really think are good wagers? And then you get to Tuesday's ones, and I'm going to bet them because that's what we've been doing, but they look terrible to me. Elsewhere on that Tuesday card, from a fantasy standpoint, obviously with Phoenix, we're watching to see what's going on with Devin Booker. Sounds like he might actually be playing in this ball game. Does that completely derail DeAnthony Melton? I think probably. Josh Jackson goes back doing way less. Does this make Mikal Bridges better, actually, in a strange twist? Because he has no usage regardless, and maybe he gets open a bit more with Booker out on the floor. Indiana set to get Miles Turner back, most likely. That's a big get for them and their defense. But when guys come back from injury, oftentimes there's a little bit of a grogginess period, so maybe that actually helps a Phoenix bet. Shouldn't change much for the front court. A little bit less on the rebounding side for Thad Young. Everybody else, they're okay. Minnesota, Philadelphia. Ooh, the Jimmy Butler trade revenge game. You know he's going to want to do stuff, and you know they're going to let him. I don't have a thought on this game from a sports betting standpoint. I wouldn't venture to say there's a spot you should explore, but it is going to be interesting. Maybe the under, if you see these guys start to club one another a little bit, but that's tough to bet when there's no Rob Covington out there. Cat and Joel Embiid. That'll be a nice battle, too. Fun one. OKC, Atlanta. Taurean Prince will watch his minutes to see how they're slowly increasing over the last little bit. He was 11 minutes his first game back. Let's see if we can get up to 15 or 16. When he gets to about 24, that's when I would drop him back into the lineup. And that might be a week. So let's not push this thing. It's just nice to see him out on the floor again. Miami, Derek Jones Jr., let's hope he can get his decent allotment of minutes. This feels like a good game for him to get it, too, because Milwaukee has one big man in Brook Lopez, and then everybody else is just a bunch of swing guys, and that feels like a good fit to get old DJ Jr. out there and let him take off. Airplane mode, they call him. That's a fun nickname. That would not be my nickname. My nickname would be like motorized scooter mode, rascal mode. But we're, of course, watching to see if anybody can separate themselves in Miami. He's the guy with the fantasy stat set to make some noise. So let's hope, let's watch, let's pray. Let's put our eggs in that basket and see if it works out. Golden State, Denver, don't care. That's a no-care game. You're just watching Denver to see who's coming back slowly. Chicago, L.A., sounds like Bobby Portis wants to play in this ballgame, so that's a good sign. Lakers hoping to bounce back off an ugly loss their last time out. Just a hideous loss. I think there's going to be this thought that they'll just come back and play a lot better in this ballgame, but I don't know that that's necessarily true, and the line is really short. I would lean Chicago, if anything. It's not a revenge game, so it's not on our list, but I think the Bulls are competitive. Teams just give the Lakers their best shot, even when LeBron's not there. It's a tough universe to play in for a bunch of guys that desperately need one of their sort of true point guards to come back. Lonzo's not there yet. He's been great on defense. He's improving, but he can't run the offense yet. And I know this is like list of things that you didn't think you'd say when the season started. Lakers need Rajon Rondo back. Those 5 words. It just felt wrong, but it's true. They need him because JaVale McGee can't get his dunks. He can't get going. That's the stuff he needs to feel better about the other end of the floor, block some shots and fly around a little bit. They need the guy who's going to make the right first pass. Lonzo's the guy that makes that instinctive, correct second pass, but he's not great at setting up the offense. When he penetrates, nobody cares about him going to the rim. Obviously, when LeBron penetrates, there's just like nothing you can do about it. With Rondo, he does have that sort of long arm kind of leaning layup shot that he'll just scoop over the edge of the rim. It's tough to block because he leans out real far. Even that would get the job done for Lonzo. And he can jump. He's a leaper. He just can't quite finish yet. I don't know. I'm getting sidetracked here. Lakers withdrawal a little bit. I wouldn't I wouldn't buy into the notion that the Lakers are just going to come out and blow Chicago out of the water. I think they're going to put up a good fight. I was watching that Kings game last night. This is a question that has come up a little bit in fantasy. Would you prefer to have Marvin Bagley or Bobby Portis going forward? And I think last night, that Kings-Blazers game, which, good for Damian Lillard, nice ball game, etc. There wasn't a whole lot from a fantasy standpoint. Harry Giles, 18 strong minutes, but he needs more than that, as we mentioned earlier on. Bagley, 24 minutes. He basically split the power forward time with Nemanja Bjelica. 13 and 11, yeah, double-double, but 1 for 5, worse, free throw shooting, and he fouled out. His free throw shooting is not good, and it'll hurt you, and he doesn't do enough of the other stuff yet, where he might actually be useful for the Kings as a nice rebounding presence. From a fantasy perspective, I think I'd rather take a shot on Portis because he'll step out and he'll hit the three. Bobby's not what you'd call an elite foul shooter by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not going to tank you the way that Bagley does. Portis is probably going to be in the mid-70s, and Bagley, you're looking at more than likely low 60s. So that, to me, just from sort of your traditional 9-cat or category league look, I don't know that either one of these guys is going to be a good 9-category dude, but between the two of them, you lean Portis there, and then in a points league, maybe even you consider Bagley because that free throw percentage doesn't matter. And if he's going out there and he's getting you like 14 and 10, maybe that's more worthwhile to you than Bobby Portis, who might get you 16 and 6, but there might be a couple of three-pointers and a steal involved. So you weigh the options on that one. If the Kings ever fall out of this thing, and I don't know that that's going to happen. There's people keep talking like, well, what happens when the Kings fade? And they might fade a little, but they're still a game over 500 right now. They're very good at home. Yes, they've struggled within their division. Good teams have given them trouble on the road at times. They're not terrible on the road. They're in the 10 seed right now. It's going to be tough for them to get over the hump and join those upper echelon teams in the West. The Timberwolves are obviously breathing down their necks. The Pelicans right there as well. Mavericks somehow still hanging in there. But it is going to be tough for the Kings. They'd have to jump over the Lakers and the Jazz to get into that last playoff spot. And if LeBron ever comes back, then that's going to be hard for them. You'd have to hope that a team like maybe the Clippers fades. If somebody gets hurt, the injuries, that's the spot that they're looking at. So I don't know that the Kings make the playoffs this year, but they're certainly playing well, and I don't know that they go away. And it makes me think they're going to be fighting right down the stretch. So maybe that's the argument for Bagley, that he'll actually play the games at the end of the year. But at the same time, I'd almost rather just have Bobby Portis for whatever games he's going to give you. And then if Chicago pulls the plug on him with a week to go, you drop him and you go find somebody else. Because weirdos are going to be like, last year I moved from third to second place. And I probably won an extra $200 or $300 in a roto league because I played a third string center on the Pistons on the last day of the year. Eric Moreland, I think, was the guy. He got me 4 blocks or something in the last game of the season. So you're not going to need Bagley or Portis on the last day. Someone else is going to pop up that's going to be a better option. I get sidetracked easily. Again, check out our DFS contest. That's all I can truly ask of you today. And many of you, again, continue to check out the in-season premium pass. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Again, get at me on Twitter. And I've said it before, some of you might not be on Twitter. Just go sign up. Don't even do the profile picture stuff. Make some stupid login username that you'll never remember. And then you can bug me on that. It can exclusively be to follow me and to ask me questions about fantasy sports. I don't care. You don't have to use the other services. But if you want to ask me about the DFS stuff, or you want to ask questions about the in-season premium pass, whatever it might be, it's a good way to get a hold of me because I'm not about to give out my email address just willy-nilly, and I can get it to you that way. Or we can just communicate on Twitter. It's simple. I know don't follow 400 people. Don't get buried by it if you're not a Twitter person, but use it to contact me if you need to. Tomorrow on the podcast, the great Mike Apotria will join us. Yes, it's DFS Day on Wednesday. We'll be previewing the Wednesday evening DFS card, getting everybody ready for our weekly contest here at the Hoop. Ah, man, I'm so close. I'm so close every week. It's making me so sad. I'm tempted to go look up my DFS roster from last week right now, but I don't think I'm going to do it because it's just going to make me sad. I believe I went like a weird high-low thing. I don't know why I do that. I honestly don't know why I do the things I do. I think I was decidedly middle of the pack. I needed J.J. Barea to not have a terrible game, and he did. I needed Evan Turner to be better than he was, and he wasn't. And I needed Thad Young to be a bit better. I put a lot of cheap dudes in my lineup so that I could afford James Harden and Anthony Davis. And it almost worked out because DeAnthony Melton did enough. Ed Davis had a really nice game as a super affordable option. Raul Neto was very cheap. He had like 20 points. I probably could have even survived the Evan Turner 19-point game, but I needed J.J. Barea to get probably another 10, so 22-ish to 25. I probably needed Thad Young to get up near 28 or 30. Where would I have been in this contest, I guess, if I had had another 20 points? Instead of 275, 295? 15th place. Yeah, that would have been money. So that was it. I needed J.J. Barea to have a more typical 20 to 25-point fantasy night, and I needed Thad Young to just get like 2 steals and 1 more bucket, and I would have placed. It's that close. So that's soul-crushing. I don't know why I did that. I just said I wasn't going to because it was going to make me sad, and then I did it, and now I'm sad. Anyway, that'll about do it for us on this Tuesday show. I told you it would be a little bit shorter. I'm going to keep my promise. This will be under 50 minutes today, so you can get back to your day a little bit quicker. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop ball presentation brought to you, as always, by our good pals at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. Enjoy the games tonight. We'll be continuing to track those revenge angles on Twitter. Bug me at Dan Besbris if you have any questions. You can, of course, follow Hoopball at Hoopball Fantasy and at Hoopball Tweets. And you can go check out the in-season premium membership by going to hoop-ball.com. That's a hyphen, not the word dash. Hoop-ball.com. Click on the premium tab, choose Go Premium, and you can get it for free through DraftKings. You make a $10 deposit up that way. Or you can get it for $9.99 right now, or with the coupon code. Let's see, which one do we want to give out today? SPIDA. That was Adrian's code. SPIDA. S-P-I-D-A, as in Spida Mitchell. Donovan. S-P-I-D-A is the coupon code. That still works from 3 months ago. So you can get that thing knocked down from $9.99 to $6.99. Give us a try. Demo us for the next 3 months. If you hate it, then what? You know what? $7. That's all it was. And if you love it, then next year you know to get it ahead of time instead of waiting until January. You can be great all season. This podcast will always be free, so fear not. We don't need your $7, but we wouldn't mind having it. How about that? Makes sense, right? Have a lovely Tuesday, everybody. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. Again, Mike Apatria on the pod then. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.